The story begins with Shinichi Kanou, a hardcore otaku and the protagonist of the story. He gets rejected by his crush, punishing him further into the otaku rabbit hole. Thanks to his vast knowledge in anime, manga, and games, he lands a job in a company looking for such an otaku. However, his meeting goes sideways when he's dragged and kidnapped by his employer. Shinichi wakes up in a mysterious place and sees a maid, who is speaking a foreign language. She gives him a ring which allows them to talk to each other. Shinichi is taken aback by all this, but loves the attention he's getting. The maid introduces herself as Muso Foran, and she calls Shinichi her master. Another girl explains that Shinichi is in the capital of the Holy Eldant Empire. She introduces herself as Minori Kogunoma, a member of the Self-Defense Force. She explains that he was brought to the fantasy world of the Eldant Empire. The guy who dragged him, Matoba Jinzaburo, shows up in a car and explains to him that they discovered a strange hole in the jungle around Mount Fuji, which contained a wormhole to another world. The world of the Holy Eldant Empire. Unlike Earth, this world functioned on magic and had magical creatures such as dragons. Humans of Earth dispatched a team to this new world and struck a deal with the people of this fantasy world. They came with Amutech, an entertainment firm. As the general manager of Amutech, Shinichi Kanou's job is to export Japan's best anime, manga, and video games to this world. Shinichi first tries to leave but is convinced to stay after hearing about the privileges he'll receive. Later that day, Musel gives him some tea and accidentally reveals her elf ears. She tells him that she's part elf. She says that elves are not treated well in this world. Shinichi tells her that he will never be mad at her for who she is. Since she can't read, he teaches her some basic Japanese letters. She introduces him to his servant, Brooke Darwin. Later, he is summoned to the court of the Empress to meet her, but he loses control when he sees that the Empress is a 16-year-old girl. This angers her and she uppercuts him. Matoba comes to the rescue and tells the Empress that in their world, one is not considered an adult until they are 20. This calms the Empress down. Minori introduces him to Chancellor Zaharl and the noble knight and Empress's cousin, Gallius N. Cordoval. Gallius expresses his doubts on the otaku culture and questions its value since it can be mastered by a mere child like Shinichi. This angers Shinichi, who calls Gallius a fool for judging otaku culture before experiencing it. Gallius charges at him in fury but is stopped by Zaharl. Shinichi's attitude amuses the Empress and she gives a green light for the Amutech project. Shinichi then spends his nights teaching Musel and his days bringing some anime or manga material that might interest this world. The Empress comes to supervise Shinichi's work one day and is quite impressed, so she allows him to call her by her first name, Petrolka. She orders Shinichi to read her a manga and tells everyone else to leave them. Shinichi convinces the Empress to leave Musel with them. As he's reading the manga, he gets more talkative with Musel, which makes the Empress jealous. She sits in Shinichi's lap and orders Musel to bring them tea. He's shocked to learn that elves and lizard people are treated like second-class citizens who must join the army to move up the ranks. Musel also used to be in the army and was known for her use of magic. One day, as he's reading a manga for Petrolka, she gets angry at Musel for interrupting them. Shinichi stops the Empress before she hits Musel and explains the values of equality and freedom to her. The Empress forgives Musel after being impressed by Shinichi's attitude once again. Shinichi promises to teach the Empress Japanese as well. Shinichi orders the construction of a school for everyone in the new world, which soon gets filled with children eager to learn. During his routine manga narration, the Empress confesses that she has never had fun with being with someone before. However, Shinichi upsets her by talking about Musel. Minori explains to Shinichi that the Eldant Empire is built on a feudal system, incompatible with the values of the modern world, and thus not ready for change. Later that day, Shinichi is surprised to learn that Musel can now form long sentences in Japanese. She asks Shinichi to take her with him to Japan, which makes Shinichi blush but also confused since he doesn't want to get his hopes up. 20 days later, his school grew in student strength as more and more kids joined the academy. Petrolka lashes out on Shinichi due to her jealousy regarding his relationship with Musel. Some mysterious cloaked men take advantage of the commotion and keep the Empress hostage. The mysterious people are revealed to be Beiduna, a terrorist group that is opposed to Shinichi's idea of education for everyone and intermingling all classes. They have a very destructive exterminating flame with them that can blow up the school. Shinichi rebukes the leader of the group for his racist ideas, but it's of no use. As the group prepares to kill him, Petrolka says that killing him won't do anything since he's just a figurehead from Japan. The leader then turns his attention to Petrolka. Meanwhile, Shinichi helps Minori get to her knife so she can cut the ropes. Later, Shinichi makes a ruckus to go to the bathroom. Minori uses that opportunity to cut the ropes and take out the guards. Musou also uses her magic to eliminate the guard. The leader pulls out the flame as a last resort, but Shinichi extinguishes it. Angered, the leader tries to stab Petralka, but Musou saves her. The Empress is taken aback by her sacrifice and asks her why she did that. Musou tells the Empress that she believes in Shinichi's dream that one day all classes will understand each other. Musou gets rushed to the hospital and fortunately survives the stabbing. The Empress has a change of heart towards Musou after the incident. Musou returns 1 month later to the mansion as Shinichi takes on his teaching duties. He teaches some otaku terms to his students, but his enthusiasm makes the lesson one-sided and difficult to follow. So Minori tells him to take a break and starts teaching on his behalf in the meantime. When they're getting back home, Minori senses an intruder approaching the mansion on her radar. Minori grabs her gun and they both search the grass near the mansion to find the intruder. They run into Urbiya Hanaman, a werewolf girl who describes herself as a wandering artist. Shinichi is impressed by her art, but Minori speculates that she might be a spy from Bahailam, an enemy nation. She sends Ariba to jail for being a spy, even though Shinichi is against that decision. Shinichi protests against this decision in the Empress's court and tries to convince Gallius to let Urbiya free, as her services as an illustrator will be highly valuable for the otaku culture work. The Empress tells Shinichi that he's only defending the werewolf girl because she happens to be pretty. Shinichi makes a failed attempt to hide that fact. The court is not convinced that Urbiya should be allowed to live, so Shinichi pulls out the final trick. He tells the court that they can use Urbiya as a double spy to make her deliver false information to the Bahalaim Empire. Gallius finds the scheme clever, and the Empress puts Urbiya in the care of Shinichi. Shinichi is pleased by Urbiya's artwork and compliments her skills. Urbiya tells Shinichi that werewolves are taught to redirect their hunting instincts towards their goals. Next day, Shinichi gives a lecture on popular games from Japan to his students. He enthusiastically plays a visual novel game in front of the students to share the experience with them. He comes back and runs into Musou carrying tons of laundry. He commends her for working hard and helps her carry the load. This deepens their relationship as Musou starts to develop feelings for Shinichi. Later that day, he calls Urbiya for dinner, but finds no response. He goes to check up on her, only to find her obsessively drawing. She glares at him and kicks him out of the room. He turns to find her still glaring at him. The next day, his classroom gets into a fight regarding fandoms. Minori settles this dispute with her gun. Shinichi can't stop thinking of Urbiya's behavior and suspects that she wants to kill him. Meanwhile, he's summoned to the Empress's court. She acts like a tsundere in front of him. He gets back home and asks Musou if she would like to go to Japan with him, and she says yes in a joyful tone. Later, he has a nightmare and wakes up to find Urbiya on top of him. He screams and everyone comes running into his room, only to find Urbiya being intimate with him. Urbiya explains that due to the season, she was in heat and gave in to her animalistic desires. Tension between dwarves, elves, and humans are increasing in Shinichi's school. Later that day, Shinichi sees Urbiya playing with a soccer ball and gets an idea for a friendly soccer competition in school. Shinichi says to the Empress that this match can end the hate between the dwarves and the elves by encouraging them to cultivate some sportsmanship. The Empress approves the competition and Shinichi moves forward with the plans for competition. A reward from the Japanese government is announced for the winner. The match begins and the dwarves immediately score a goal. The elves are taken aback by this shot. Next, the dwarves are completely outside the elves and score another goal. Since the dwarves are very powerful, elves are having a hard time stopping them. They scored multiple goals in the first half. Since elves are outmatched in strength, Shinichi has to allow the use of magic in the next game. The next game begins and the elves completely demolish the dwarves with their magic. Things don't go as planned as dwarves and elves start a war against each other and cause enormous damage to the arena. As everyone is unconscious, the match results in a draw, and both dwarves and elves get the prize. Shinichi convinces Mitoba to let him go back to Japan for a while so he can purchase games himself. He asks Mitoba to take Musou with him, but Mitoba says that people of this world can't survive the atmosphere of his world. The next morning, Shinichi is drugged and taken back to his room. He unzips the luggage bag to find that Musou snuck into this world with him. He checks up on her and asks whether she's okay. After finding out that she's fine, he realizes that Mitoba had lied to him in regarding the people of Eldant. Musou finds the technologies of this world fascinating. Shinichi takes Musou to Akiba with him. She sees people in maid costumes and mistakes them for being the same as her. Shinichi explains that it's called cosplay. He shows her around and has lunch with her in the famous soba restaurant. They get back home and Shinichi is having trouble keeping his composure since he has never been alone with a girl in his room. He leaves to get something as Musou gets ready for a bath. He goes back home and finds Musou on the floor. When shifting her to the bed, he has to stop himself from touching her. He then wakes up to find himself in the mansion once again. Petralka grows tired of all her responsibilities as an empress, so she escapes from the palace using clothes and curtains. She also leaves a note for everyone. Gallius dispatches his guards on the search for the empress. Shinichi finds Petralka sleeping inside a box in a warehouse. Gallius comes looking for her as well and wakes her up. Shinichi asks Gallius if she can take a day off, but Gallius says that the Empress must pay attention to important matters. Next day, the Empress locks herself up inside her room using a magic barrier that no Eldant can enter. Since Shinichi is not an Eldant, he could enter the room. Being a shut-in weeb himself, he decides to take the matter into his own hands. Gallius explains to Shinichi that Petralka is his cousin, and she inherited the throne when her parents were murdered by his parents. Since then, Petralka has buried herself with work in pursuit to become the perfect empress. Shinichi promises to make Petralka feel better and goes inside her room. Petralka tells him that she's trying to live like a hikikomori, an introverted weeb. Shinichi tells her that her room is lackluster when it comes to a hikikomori room and makes a new room for her. Shinichi enables her shut-in tendencies and plays games with her for hours. She then feels a need for a bath, so Shinichi and Petralka have to sneak out of the room. He distracts the guard so she can take a bath. They make it back to the room where Shinichi tells her the downsides of being an introverted weeb. He tells about his own experiences and how being a hikikomori has harmed him in the long run. Petralka finally decides to leave the room and resume her duties. Gallius is happy since Shinichi has helped him tremendously with Petralka. He says to Shinichi that he can ask for anything from Gallius. Shinichi uses the opportunity to ask for a vacation. Gallius allows them to go to a lake near the Imperial Villa for their vacation. Shinichi is overjoyed since he's getting his own swimsuit episode. Meanwhile, Petralka is also making plans for visiting the beach after her work hours. She orders her intellectuals to make a swimsuit for her. After a lot of discussion, they finally decide on a school swimsuit. Everyone is having fun on the beach, unaware that they're being watched by someone from a distance. When they're having lunch, a student of theirs comes running to them for help. He tells them that Remilda, a dwarf student, got abducted by some unknown people in the jungle. Minori suspects that they might be members of Beiduna, the terrorist group. Following the elf student's guide, they find the people in the jungle and capture them. They turn out to be members of the Special Defense Forces who were just trying to peek at Minori. Meanwhile, Petralka loves her new swimsuit. Matoba delivers shocking news to Shinichi. It turns out that the footage from their soccer game got somehow leaked into social media websites. This put their project at risk of being exposed to the outside world. Shinichi comes with a solution to the problem. He tells the CEO that they can pretend that the match was part of a fantasy movie. He hires his friends in the Eldant Empire to act in the movie, while Petralka acts as the main heroine. The shooting begins as they capture a scene using real magic instead of VFX. After the shooting, a soldier interrupts Minori and calls her as they have found a dragon's nest, which must be dealt with. They take a dragon whisperer with them to the dragon's lair. The dragon wakes up after smelling Minori's perfume and attacks them. They have to give up on the dragon. Meanwhile, Shinichi carries on with the shooting. The time comes when they're shooting with a fake dragon. Since the shooting location is near the real dragon's lair, the dragon whisperer warns them not to use any perfume, since it can attract the dragon. However, Minori uses the perfume, which ends up waking up the dragon. The dragon attacks the set, but the military fires at it, thus forcing it to fly away. Later that day, Petralka shows her gratitude to Shinichi by kissing him on the cheeks. Shinichi's plan works, and the world is convinced that the soccer match was part of a VFX movie. Matoba compliments Shinichi for his work in the Eldant Empire, which gives Shinichi a huge confidence boost. Shinichi notices a lack of anime and manga material in the school and also realizes that the people of Eldant Empire are now becoming obsessed with the culture. He asks Minori to increase the number of copies the government is importing to the Eldant Empire. Minori advises him to take it up with Matoba since her word won't do the trick. Matoba tells Shinichi that the government always wanted to create a huge demand for their culture in this world. Matoba explains that this world is now in their control and Shinichi is the vanguard of their invasion. This shocks Shinichi as he realizes that he was being used all along for a cultural invasion, but is helpless since the government can dispose of him after going against it. Later that day, he runs into Musel preparing food for him and decides he can't take it anymore. He says that he's an invader and he shouldn't be here. Musel ends up crying and begs him not to leave her. This gives Shinichi motivation to do something for this country. He asks for a meeting with Petralka and suggests that talented artists from the Eldent Empire should make their own anime and manga so they don't have to rely on the Japanese government, much to Mitoba's dismay. The Empress approves and finds the idea wonderful. Some assassins make their way to Shinichi's room to assassinate him. However, Petralka's elite elf guards easily dismantle all of them. Next morning, Mitoba apologizes to Petralka and explains that the attack was the work of some radicals not sanctioned by the government. He assures everyone that this won't happen again. However, the court now knows that Shinichi and the government have different interests. One day, the castle's outer wall is attacked with the exterminating flame. Even though they see crests from the Bahalame outside, Petralka suspects the Japanese government is behind the attack. Shinichi sees that the school is burning, so he runs to retrieve the copies. Musel, Brook, and Urbia follow him. As Shinichi gets to the library, he's knocked unconscious and is left inside the library. Using Brook's strength, Urbia and Musel get inside the school. As Urbia holds off the guards, Musel goes to look for Shinichi and finds him in the library. Urbia is about to get shot, but Minori comes to the rescue. They make their way to the library and safely take Shinichi with them. Shinichi wakes up to notice that the school has burned down. Shinichi asks Mitoba to let him talk to the officials. During an online meeting, Shinichi makes the official snap and confesses the true intentions of the government. Shinichi then pulls out Petralka's magic drone. Since she has heard everything, she warns that if they try to hurt Shinichi again, she will sever the diplomatic relationship between the government and the Eldent Empire. The government agrees and the school is reopened shortly after that. Shinichi resumes his role as an otaku teacher, and that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.